Ms. Keys-Maloney will answer the next question first. Ms. Keys-Maloney, government must balance its responsibility to provide services against the need to keep taxes down. As a member of council, would you aim to provide all services at the highest level possible, even if it meant raising taxes? Or would you aim to reduce services to minimize taxes? And if so, what services would you reduce first?
Thank you. Actually, this is a question that lots of communities across the country and within the state have faced in the last several years. And the reality is that there has to be a balance. And it's my job, if elected, it's the members of council's job right now to make that determination of what's appropriate there. We have to ensure that we keep taxes reasonable. One way to do that is actually to spur economic development so that you're increasing your tax base, and that's some of the discussion that we just kind of went through in terms of GM and the naval site. But it also means that sometimes you have to make the tough choices. And I know that this administration and this council had to make some tough choices in recent years. And one of those choices had to do with trash collection. The reality is that those tough choices are why you elect folks. And sometimes we have to choose the best possible scenario for the most, or for the most amount of the community itself. Moving to once a week trash collection was one way to do that. We ensured that there was an essential service retained. It just wasn't as rich as maybe it once was. I think that as a member of council, you have a duty to ensure that first and foremost, public safety is maintained. There are certain things that are a fundamental aspect of what we consider to be municipal government, things like fire, police, EMS. But it also includes the things that we expect on a regular basis to be at our curbside, and those are things like trash. And it includes things like recycling. And I think sometimes you have to balance those things, prioritize the things that are most important to us, as I illustrated, and then recognize that where we can make wise choices and also enrich the tax base through things like redevelopment, those are the solutions that we have to move toward. And I think this administration and this council have done that, and I would look to continue that work if elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keys-Maloney. Mr. Prykanowski.
I'm not in favor of reducing services. However, there are some tough choices that have to be made. Ms. Keys-Maloney alerted to the trash. That was a good idea, but it's been a Donnybrook. It hasn't been done the way it's supposed to. It started out one way and wound up another way. Recycling is important. The people weren't fully communicated with how the trash collection would be taken up. You have summertime, which you get barbecues and parties and things like that, and once a week trash collection is not quite right. Also, they went back to picking up everything. We don't need to put leaves in a landfill. That's why we have this spot up at Jack Steffen Way. If necessary, we should have our township employees picking up the bag leaves or whatever and taking it up there. It should not go into the trash and into the landfill. The other thing, too, is we have something called tonnage grants. The state of New Jersey taxes every ton of trash that we put in the landfill. And that tonnage, that extra money goes into a grant fund that we can draw down on based on how much we can recycle. Basically, what I would like to do, if elected, is talk to the employees. They are our most important asset in this town with respect to things. What I would like to put in place is an employee incentive plan. Let them help us save money. They are the boots on the ground. They see things every day that can be corrected. And if they can save us X number of dollars, I would have no problem. In fact, I would like to get a plan in place where they would share in that. So if they saved us $1,000, we would give them at the end of the year, proving that savings, give them a $100 check. And with this, I can guarantee you we can save a lot of programs The other thing, too, is shared services.
Mr. Prykanowski, that's time. Thank you. Mr. Schroth?
Certainly the balancing act between raising taxes and providing services is the age-old question that municipal governments, state governments, and our federal government have been faced with. And ultimately, the decision cannot be made until you're faced with the choice that you're presented with. And that's why when you are considering your candidates and you're looking up at this stage and you're deciding who to support, you have to look to someone who is going to provide leadership and decision-making ability. When Mayor Steinman took office, our taxes had gone up over 40% in Ewing Township. And he was faced with some extremely difficult decisions. Hundreds of thousands in pension funding had not been paid. Water and utility bills had not been paid to the tune of millions of dollars. And he made some cutbacks, and we have gotten through it, and taxes have been stabilized as a result of it. Most citizens in Ewing Township have seen either their taxes not go up, or in many cases they've actually gone down. So you have to evaluate these things on a case-by-case basis. You have to balance it. Is it a public safety issue? The city of Trenton was racked and wreaked havoc, I should say, by the layoffs of up to 100 police officers. So do you cut back on public safety? You can't. You can't. Public safety is the base, it's the foundation upon which our civilization and our town survives. So it's about decision making, it's about evaluating these things on a case-by-case basis, and it's about leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroth. Mr. Steward?
I currently believe, and as I've walked around Ewing Township, I've heard generally, and it's been supported, my feeling that right now, taxes are going up and services are going down. But how do we deal with that? We have to remember that right now, we have a limitation. We are guided right now by a 2% cap that is imposed on the municipalities by the state government. So that is forcing municipal government to take a close look inside themselves. Having watched administrations over the last 10 or 12 years, I believe that we finally need leadership, but leadership to take a close look inside of ourselves. I believe that there's a lot of efficiency that we can squeeze back out of our municipality, our government. I believe that there's different ways. The panel tonight has talked about garbage. They've subcontracted out. It's a very good thing. I think we have to keep going further. Discuss, evaluate, and investigate other areas of the township that might benefit from that kind of thinking. But truly, I think we need a good hard look in ourselves to see if we can restructure our government. I think what I've seen is that this township is governed and is operating in a fashion that we've been doing for the last at least 20 years. So we have to take a look at ourselves deeply inside and then work together. There will be nothing that comes of this unless we are able to all sit down and find the solutions to providing flatter taxes and better or stable services.
Thank you, Mr. Steward. Mr. Smeel?
Yeah, the question on managing resources is really about simply planning. You don't budget in a vacuum. you have to do planning. And that means you don't do it for one static year. It should be something that's done across many years so that we can have a balance, if you will, of how many dollars we're going to spend this year and over the next 5 to 10 years. That's what I believe we ought to be doing. And it's a collaboration and a collective effort between the administration and council. It's not the administration's responsibility or the mayor's to strike a budget and say that his way or no way, and it's not council's. It's about bringing the council and the administration together and looking at these things very, very diligently to determine what direction we need to go. One of the things I will say is that someone mentioned the fact of outsourcing our services. As far as I'm concerned, government is about public service. And public service is not outsourcing our services. It's learning how to manage our services so that we can maintain those services within a reasonable cost to the public. When we outsource it, in several years, we're going to find that those entities that control that particular activity is going to ring us in a more expensive way than you can ever imagine. So I don't agree with that idea or that concept. I think it's incumbent upon us on council and the administration to plan and strike a budget so that we can move forward without worrying about the reduction of forces and that type of thing, and providing services, much needed services, to members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samil. Mr. Baxter.
Let me first answer that. I don't think anybody goes in thinking they want to raise taxes on residents. It's a tough balancing act, as many of people have just pointed out, but to reduce services, people don't want to lose services either. You have to try and find that fine line in between the two. And I think at this point, although it's a short term, and I do believe planning for the long term is the way we need to look at things, but in the short term, we've been able to balance not raising taxes without depleting the service that people are used to getting. And in fact, we've actually improved services in some areas. As you may know, we passed recently the capital budget, which we took on new debt service. This allowed us not only to lower the interest rate, and it didn't affect taxpayers at one penny, but it also improved our equipment. It upgraded equipment. It provided us with rehabilitating our town hall, paving our roads, you know, really bringing the town back to life as it's supposed to be. And when you talk about putting input into it from the workers themselves, that is a great point. I actually talked to those people that were affected by the trash getting privatized. I talked with members from sanitation. I actually rode on the truck with them, many of you may know. So I do talk to people. I get involved, and I like to know exactly who's going to be affected by any of the decisions that we make. And when those decisions take place, I go to those people. I don't just take administration side. I don't just sit and consult with council. I go to the people that it affects. And I like to make sure that when we do make a decision, that people are not drastically affected and that services will not be reduced, but that everybody can coexist and live in Ewing as one good town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Mr. Lester.
Township services is happens to be an area that I'm very experienced in. I was boots on ground. I was in the sewers. I was in the storm drains. I worked for Princeton Sewer Operating Committee, and I've seen the costs and the wasted contracts and wasted efforts on fixing certain roads the wrong way, or rushing to decisions as a short-term goal. I've seen it. I've seen $5,000 pipes go in, $5,000 pipes come out the next month. I was the one removing them. A resolution to that is just as Ron said. Talk to the guys that are boots on ground. They'll tell you how to fix it. They'll tell you how to save money fixing it. And they'll probably even tell you where the grants are to fix it. Now, a raise in taxes and a loss of services tells me one thing, that the problem is twice as bad as the people actually think. That's a double sacrifice, not for the councils, not for the mayor, for the residents. That's a double sacrifice on their part. They have to give up a service, and now they have to pay more. I think by using these grants and using funds that come to us free through the federal government and the state government, we can balance and not have to lose services and perhaps drop taxes. Now, Dave said that taxes have been stabilized. That's not true. Taxes are surplused directly after your election year, and then they're balanced for the next 3. And then when the election goes off, they're raised again to balance the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lester.